So I'd also like to acknowledge the unceded land that we're meeting on. And I'm just really sad today that we've seen the enactment of colonial power, and we're talking about the enactment of gender power as well in children's poverty. And it's just really sad that the way that the system works to buttress the status quo. It works to reinforce the power of those that have power at the expense of those that don't. And this book report is another example of that. It's about the child support system, as Sharon's talked about, lots of people have talked about. It came from that Bold Before speech. It started before that. It's been a movement to bring in the child support system that would had child poverty reduction as one of its aims. That it sought to cost the price of caring labour and transfer money from a breadwinning father typically to a caregiving mother. It worked for a bit. We saw the stats around, well, with lots of other things, child poverty did reduce. It was in for a few years and then the review started because it challenged the gender order. It challenged, there was a line you made, Sharon, that you can't, children are blameless for their poverty. And the flip side of that is that their bad single mothers aren't, that they are to blame. We are able to blame them because they deserve it. They've broken the patriarchal order. They're asking for things they're not entitled to. And child support's one of them. Child support it's not seen as an entitlement. I get told off by people, other academics in Canberra, that it's not an entitlement. You're not to use that word in your grant applications, in your journal articles. It is an entitlement. It's children's entitlement to support from both of their parents. But women have to be a worthy gift recipient to be eligible for it. They have to perform the good mother, the good ex-partner. They have to make themselves worthy and do all the right things and placate the payer. And they have to also placate the government. They have to jump through all of these hoops but at every turn, they're pushed into a decision that is least likely to work for them. So we've done studies of how people move through the Centrelink system. If you want to receive family tax benefits above the base rate, you have to seek child support. If you don't seek child support, then you get the minimal rate. 15% of people who are eligible don't meet that test. We don't know why. We don't collect any stats on it. That's the government's target, that 15% just won't. That's not good enough. Those children in those families are then receiving much less family tax benefits than they're entitled to. And the government's fine with that. That's a choice, that's their target. Then if you make your way into the system, if you can be exempt from seeking payments, and one of the reasons for that is around family violence, which means then that the perpetrator doesn't have to pay anything towards the cost of their children. Again, that's perfectly fine. That's how the system is meant to work, that the children in those families who need the most help and the most support, the government says that's fine, you don't get that. You get the full family tax benefits, but you don't get any of the assistance from the non-resident parent. And that's only if those parents know that they can seek an exemption. They're not told about the exemptions often. It's not sort of flagged. Seeking an exemption and identifying your ex-partner as too dangerous to go and have conversations about child support about can put you in danger, can harm you. So it's an unwinnable choice. And whatever women do then, they're blamed for what happens of like, why didn't you seek child support or why didn't you collect it? So often we find women talk about, well, the Services Australia tells them, well, why don't you say you're going to collect child support, but collect it privately and then just don't follow up on it. So that sounds great. That's another choice that we've made, that we'll put the work on the women and then we'll put the blame for the consequences on the women. So 50% of the caseload privately collects child support, which means if you're in the agency system, your family tax benefits scale. If you don't get the right amount of child support, you might get more family tax benefit that fortnight, or it's complicated how you choose to calculate that. It always works, it favours the government, and then people get either a debt or a lump sum later on from their reconciliation. But then for the 50% who collect privately, because it's easier, don't make waves, don't bring the government into your ex-partner's business, because it's about men's autonomy and their authority. They get to choose what they do with their money. The government it's a very much more limited imposition of the government on men's lives and their financial lives. The tax system is about the only time, and men are much more able to structure their affairs as they want. As the resident parent, you're much more likely to be collecting some form of payments. So the government needs to know everything about you. There's very little room to move for women in that, very little way for them to maneuver within that system. So if you're in the private collect system, it's up to you. You're on your own in terms of collecting that money. But the government, because they're really helpful, will assume that every cent was collected in full and on time, and that it will reduce your family tax benefits on that basis. And the child support system has always been set up to reduce the money that the government pays out. It's one of the only, well, it is the only system where the recipients pay for it through reductions of other benefits. So every cent you get in child support, whether you get it or not in the private system, reduces your family tax benefits by 50 cents. And the difference in that, so if you're working, you can earn, is it 48,000 or something for the year before your benefits start going down? In child support, it's $1,500 before your family tax benefits start going down. So there's all of these discrepancies in how we treat money, how we treat women's access and entitlement to money, which then flows through to child poverty. And we do it because we can. If the government does it, because who's going to stop them? Who's going to be outraged that single parents, these bad women, are not getting something they're not entitled to? And so we need to be calling them out. We need to be naming these issues. We need to be naming the injustices and putting the onus back on the government to do something about it. And so that's why we're all here. And now I'm going to stop before I say something.